Cameron. Round the body. Cheers up! It's off! You can't be doing that in the final!
From a certain point of view, that would put a smile on your face, wouldn't it? Our coaches are in place. Chris got into a 9th preliminary final. Chris, great to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
And Adam Simpson, terrific to have you at the desk.
First time. Couldn't get Sam Mitchell or any other employed coaches.
It's great to have you here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here.
All right. 9th prelim. How about that?
Yeah, it sneaks up on me a little bit. And I think it's because I do try so hard. I don't just say it. I really do try hard to look at each year in isolation and even break it down even further than that. And every now and again, it was only a couple of weeks ago that someone said it's, I think, whatever the number is, it was a lot of top 4 finishes, and it's like, kind of doesn't feel like that. It feels like, and we were talking about it before off air, it's just the longer we've been in the game, the harder it feels it is. And that's a product in part of the competition and how tight it is, but it's just relentless, this job. So even when you feel like you're going okay, it's kind of a job, a coach's lot that you're looking forward for all the things that might go wrong, so it keeps you on edge.
In a deliberately equalised competition, how extraordinary a coaching feat is it?
Oh, unbelievable. It's got harder. You know, even when I started, you know, there was the Giants and Gold Coast, and they weren't too hard to beat, I suppose, back in the day. They were still forging their own history, and now every team seems like, you know, you're off for a half, you're in strife. So I'm sure there's games even against us the last couple of years might have felt a bit threatening. You play West Coast at home, you don't know. So yeah, been challenged for us obviously, or for West Coast the last few years, but it's as hard as ever been.
How much pride do you take yourself and your coaching group, or is it largely the players, or is it a combination of both?
No, I think it's a combination. I mean, most of it's the players, but it's more broad than that. The thing that, when I have had the chance to reflect a little bit, because it's been 14 years at the Cats, and the challenge that we had in front of us that we took on was to try to stay as competitive as possible and give ourselves a chance. But we understood that we had an older group of players and some champion players that were going to finish pretty soon, and you can kind of become victim to the cycle. And we thought we took a risk to try to fight that a bit. And I think, you know, Mitch Duncan's still playing. Tom Hawkins has announced his retirement, but everyone that I started with on the playing roster, yeah, it will be gone. And, you know, Mitch is likely to play on, but he'd be the sort of, you know, the only one. So it feels like that complete sort of regeneration. That's the thing I'm most proud of, and it's not. We haven't done it by necessarily getting the most talented players if you measure draft position, you know, as your guide to talent. And that's been interesting for it as well. We feel like we've learnt a lot of lessons along the way. And there were some strange things back when around when Simo and I started, like the expansion teams were coming in, the draft was compromised. It sort of forced you to think a little bit differently, and that's something we've tried to continue. And so when I say it's broader, it's like our list management team, our recruiting team, our administration's been really stable. I've never been more of the view that it takes a lot of things to go right and a really big group of people working cohesively.
It's almost a glib thing to say, but the best players enhanced their reputations in September. Patrick Dangerfield's last 2 finals, he was best or second best, and then he showed the way. There's a little moment at the anthem, it's like he nodded to you, I got this, coach. What?
Yeah, no, he was feeling it. And he played that way as well. Like, it's funny because there are some sort of cliches in footy that I think over time, and maybe again it's the product of a relentless long season that's really even, but some things that I think maybe, even if they used to be true, they're not anymore, and that is that, you know, you give 100% effort 100% of the time. It's impossible to maintain that, and I think the really elite guys, they're the ones that can kind of sort of manage themselves through the season a little bit and get themselves to the point where when it really counts, they can play their best. Now, some guys, you know, you don't have that luxury. You just got to play your heart out every single minute. But I think one of the reasons he's still playing at this level at 34 is, he knows which moments are more important than the others.
Just an incredible player. I want to ask you about another player, because we've spoken to Chris about this guy before, Max Holmes. 2 years ago, people say, oh, he's a great runner. He's a great runner. Oh, he's a terrific runner. He's far more than just a runner. He's probably going to win the club best and fairest, I suspect.
I think you might have mentioned it a couple of years ago too. You saw it before anyone, really. It's a testament to the recruiting, isn't it, of Geelong? That's what they've done.
Pick 20, I think he was.
Yeah, and look, that's kept everyone in good stead, the recruiting. And then there's the development and the program that you set in place, and then the positional changes as he grows throughout his career. You know, may start on the outside, may start half back, and then progress towards the midfield, and then become a contested player that can do both.
Is that difficult to teach a player who starts as an outside player and then grow to become clear? I mean, right now in the two most critical midfielders for the Cats.
Yeah, every player's different. I think you would have seen. I mean, you should speak about this rather than me, because players who we've gone through in those positions, especially when they're younger, you get them in the seniors and it's not as hot on the outside, and especially if there's a bit of skill and speed and they can play to their strengths. But I'm sure you would have seen some of the contest work that he's had in the back pocket, and it just sort of grows, and then you give him a quarter here or 15 minutes there, and then suddenly he's the complete player.
Yeah, I mean, you're recently old club. I think Harley Reid's a good example too. We probably have been fortunate over the last decade or so that we've had some good, talented young players come in and play next to Joel Selwood and Paddy Dangerfield, and even some of our guys that weren't bona fide superstars back then, like Mark Blitzarves. They were kind of big, experienced, calm heads. The challenge for Harley, I imagine, at the moment is the expectation is that as an 18-year-old, he's going to be the number one mid. We've never had that expectation of Max. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it's easier. I'm just saying it's more productive for your development.
Half back.
Well, yeah, you did your best. Yeah.
Well, he did, and he played a little bit of half back, in his junior years, and he found the ball, used it well, and we thought we could really use him and slowly progress him towards the midfield. That didn't last too long.
No, but even then, like most players, even with that talent, pick one in the draft, there's a period of years to sort of work into it. So, again, when you have success, it's it's wrong to think that it's just because we did a good job. There's a whole lot of things that are going to fall into place, and some of them are just outside of control, and luck plays a part.
Can you forget he's here for a second?
No,
just forget he's here. I spoke to Ross Lyon last week, and I asked him about Chris Scott, the coach. What's it like to go against him in the coach's box? Everyone says, "Oh, you got to beat Chris in the coach's box." It's a really good quote from Ross Lyon. I just like the way he goes about it. It was a nice line. When you're coaching against this bloke, what's it like? Is it any different, or is there something you've got to be pretty switched on because of the team he puts out?
Probably two things. You're going to hate this stuff. But, look, Geelong sides have always got exceptional craft, so fundamentals seem to be their biggest strength. And as much as you might not think that's a coaching thing, it is. It's the program you set pre-season, younger players, older players, driving standards. And I've always found their craft and fundamentals are always in the top 3 or 4. And then there's system. And what I've noticed over the years is he's evolved with the game. Always has some layers behind in defence that, and the way he gets those layers, we can never work it out. And you spend too much time trying to work it out, you forget what you're doing. So, yeah, it's a lot more detailed than that, but I'm not going to talk anymore.
It's nice of you to say, but just on the first point, and this is not false modesty at all. I agree with the craft part. That's got very little to do with me. I've always enjoyed working with our coaches. I feel like I've had a smart group of coaches the whole time I've been at Geelong. And then next to that, there's a group of development coaches, and Nigel Lappin leads that team at the moment, and they're responsible for that. Like they're a really important part of what we tried to do, and it's all got to sort of fit together. So we're trying to say we want to be consistently up the top, but we're not going to get early draft picks. So we better run a good development program, and that's I'm involved, but only casually. Those guys run that program.
Let me run 3 past you relatively briefly. Were you shocked by the severity of the Gary Rowan injury from the incident?
Yeah, well, it looked a little innocuous, but yeah, it was serious. So the concussion in and of itself is quite significant, and then the skull fracture as well, which requires surgery. So disappointing for him, but he's been ruled out of the prelim final, but hasn't been ruled out of the next week if we're good enough. So there's still a bit of light at the end of the tunnel there.
Is Tom Hawkins viable on what he showed you on the weekend?
Well, it was only sort of a step in the process. It's a fair way from the final step, but he and Cam Guthrie played. They got through. We're still in a position where we're open-minded and optimistic, but just don't have enough information to give you an accurate forecast at the moment.
And has Bailey Smith told Geelong that you're his club of choice?
These are hard-hitting questions. That was very direct. No, he hasn't told. I'm not aware of it.
Are you hopeful
if he has
that he's choosing you?
Yeah, but we've got a lot of balls in the air at the moment. I think it's a little bit different to the situation that we see. I think Josh Battle's an unrestricted free agent, so he's nominated Hawthorn. He's going, so he can make that call. You can't make those decisions when there's a trade situation. So my understanding is that he hasn't nominated a club, and there's a fair chance that even if those conversations have happened, that I'm not privy to it exactly. Andrew Mackey and Bailey's management would have worked through that.
So we'll wait to see.
Hard hitting, eh?
Yeah, it was direct. I expect it from you.
I was going to lie and say, were you surprised that Bailey Scott said today he's going to Geelong?
And you know that I wouldn't have listened to it, so I was going, he did.
All right, we'll delve a little further with Adam Simpson in a moment's time. Chris Scott with us on Coach's Night.